Well, as we bring this Friday night to a close, one of the enduring questions from 2020 concerns our federation and our borders, and we're going to have to answer it this year. We've famously had Operation Sovereign Borders in the past. That, of course, sealed the joint off from people smugglers and their evil trade. But lately, the state premiers, acting more like governors from the colonies of old, have had a go at their own version of sovereign borders, but this time locking out not human traffickers, but apparently diseased hordes from neighbouring jurisdictions. As I said yesterday, what makes Australia remarkable is the fact it's an entire continent occupied by just one nation. Nowhere else on earth does such a phenomenon occur. And it's a great strength and advantage. But all of this has been put under strain, and with it, our federation has been tested, I think, unlike any time in living memory. Ultimately, many are wondering whether these border closures that we're dealing with again today are actually legal, or whether they fall foul of Section 92 of the Constitution. Well, the man who knows is Professor David Flint. We couldn't get him on Skype, but we've got him on the good old telephone. Hello, David.
Hello, Michael.
Well, how legal are these border closures?
Well, according to the High Court, at least in relation to Western Australia, they are legal, which I find rather extraordinary, because Section 92 does say that trade, commerce and intercourse between the states shall be absolutely free. Be that as it may, there is an answer. There needs to be leadership from the centre. We are, as you say, one nation. And I doubt whether any one of these border closures could be justified from a medical point of view. Yes. They do not work. Part of the problem is, of course, our states are far too large, and they're concentrated in overlarge capitals which draw so many resources from the rest of the state. We do need many more states. We haven't had a new state since 1859, and since then, the Americans have had 20. But there is an answer now, and the Commonwealth should move in. The Commonwealth is not offering the leadership which they should. And I think we should bear in mind the politicians take all the credit for what's happened in relation to the virus in Australia. They're wrong there. The reason we're doing so well is we are two remote islands. And being remote islands, we can close the borders, which we didn't do very effectively, and we're still just realising that airline crews and diplomats can also bring in all sorts of melodies.
They're not special creatures after all. On these borders, though, I mean, I've been throwing this question around. It's almost a hypothetical, but I mean, it does seem rather extraordinary, David, as we bring the new year in. We've still got this crazy situation where someone who lives in Queanbeyan, as of 1 minute to midnight tonight, can't go and visit Auntie Ethel in Geelong, but Bob, who lives across the line on the map in Canberra, can. I assume Bob has to fly, because if Bob was to take the four-wheel drive down there, he'd be touching the diseased roads and bitumen of New South Wales and would probably have to quarantine. But I mean, the whole thing just seems so mad. And then you've got an even stranger geographic situation where someone who might live in, say, the back of Bourke can't go to Western Australia, but if they lived in Canberra, which is actually much closer to Sydney or some of these South Coast quote-unquote hotspots that we've had, well, they can go to Perth. So, people are saying, where's the logic?
Power corrupts, Michael, as we know, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Yeah. And they've got absolute power, some of these premiers, and they're using their power in a very nasty, unpleasant way and completely unnecessarily. What they're doing, for example, to the Victorians who are trying to get to the Victorian border is absolutely appalling and totally unjustified. But the Commonwealth needs to move in. The Commonwealth Parliament could use its powers in relation to quarantines. They have a legislative power in relation to quarantine, and they can cover the field there if they wish. They could set up a statute which sets out the circumstances in which a quarantine can be declared and the borders surrounding the basis for that quarantine. And obviously you don't need a whole state. If you do urgently need some measures, what happened in New South Wales, and I think they're going too far too, what happened in New South Wales is at least they narrowed some of the matters down to the northern beaches. I think it's far too broad when you have regard to what's happening. Completely unnecessary. And you don't need to destroy all those businesses, the politicians.
Well, that's it.
But if you had this federal legislation in relation to quarantines with a very open method, not secret. Remember the lockdown that they brought in, they kept all of that ridiculous modelling.
Well, that's right, David. That's right. As you say, too much secrecy. Look, time's going to beat us here. We'll continue the conversation at another occasion, but you've explained it well, David. Happy New Year. Thank you so much for being there for us.
Happy New Year to you and your viewers.